Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, the recap of stage 16 of the Tour de France. I must admit, both Benji and I were saying off air, we had pretty low expectations of this stage. We thought it was, probably going to be a Pogačar smash job and done and dusted and really remove all tension before this third week had even really started, before we do the proper Alp stages. And let's just say this was one of the best stages of the Tour. I mean, France, this is the deepest into a Tour de France. France has not won a stage. So that narrative is in play. We've got every team going to go on the break. We've got hot conditions. We've got a mythical climb. The climbing record hasn't been broken since Iban Mayo, 55 mins plus. And we've got Vingegaard talking in the rest day like he wants to still try to win the Tour de France. And so it's an easy thing to say that. It's another thing to try and do it against Pog and UAE. What were your expectations, Benji?
Well, firstly, I gotta say, I love the fighting spirit that Jonas showed on the rest day in those interviews, saying the likes of, I'm willing to sacrifice second place to go for the victory, stuff like that. That is shit I love. But on the other hand, there's also the question of, do I believe that rider, or are they just saying it to hold up a cover story for the sponsor, and they're actually just trying to keep second? That's also a possibility. So next to words, I want to see it on the road. So today would be a first indication of whether Jonas is actually willing to go all out to potentially win this Tour de France. In doing so, potentially risking overextending, capitulating, losing second place on GC, although that would have been kind of unexpected on a Mont Ventoux stage, I'll be honest. But expectations for today's stage, I'll be honest, I expected UAE to control the breakaway with Nils Pollitt, and the breakaway would be eaten up on Mont Ventoux by Tadej Pogačar, who would win the stage. That was my expectation for this.
Yep. Because even if Pogačar's, let's say, not dominant, you control the break. Vingegaard's starting this week on 4 minutes. He has to attack. It's headwind, by the way, so this climb's in two parts, 170 Ks or whatever. It's flat, like Benji said, with a bit of crosswind, but nothing, like 14 Ks an hour, not enough for splits. Then Ventoux is in two parts from Bedouin. You do to Chalet Renard, where Nairo Quintana woke me up in the dead of the night back in 2020, maybe 21. I can't remember when he on Tour de la Provence they used to do Chalet Renard. It's steep. It's steep.
Really, that's how you describe Chalet Renard? Come on, it's where in the famous victory of, I think, Thomas de Gent came ahead of Sergio Pauwels. Where was it, that climb where Chris Froome ran up the mountain?
Ventoux.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Chalet Renard section is the steep part where Quintana won.
The finish in that edition, I think, was brought to Chalet Renard.
Oh, really?
For a weather reason, if I recall correctly, but I could be wrong.
And so that's the tree line. So it goes up to 1,900 meters, more or less, but it's steep. 9Ks, like 8Ks, 9.5% to Chalet Renard is steep as hell. But it's in the tree line, and you got crosswind from your left, but not much wind there. So that's where but then you turn left, and you start going up the Bald Mountain, no tree line, headwind, pretty hard, like decent headwind. And then it's 7% for a while. So 7% plus headwind, you're getting a big draft on that. And then the last 1,200, 1,500 meters, which you'll have seen in our video on YouTube that we put on LRCP YouTube, the last 1,500 meters where Vingegaard attacked in 21 is quite steep again, and then it finishes on top of Ventoux this year. So it's the wind plays a really big role in Ventoux. It plays a big role in where you attack. And this episode is brought to you by Mont, which I'll get to in a second, because also I went up the mountain this morning. But yeah, sorry, Benji.
What is your wind situation of the mountain? Because I want to talk about headwind here, because we always have this indication of headwind is bad for the attacker. That's not always the case. Let's say hypothetically there's a solo attacker, and there's a guy that solo attacker drops in the headwind location, then that second rider who dropped and then also is 1v1, then that rider is also suffering. Or if a rider drops a 4-man group before the headwind, it's possible that in that headwind, you've got group 2 syndrome in that second group. So the traditional idea of headwind is that, okay, solo attacker disadvantage, riders are less eager to attack in that area. But on the other hand, I feel like it's somewhat underrated that the second group sometimes also has disadvantages. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. Like if Pogačar has a gap on 7% and it's 1v1 against Vingegaard into a headwind, it's not looking good. Because also that, well, I don't know, maybe that's better than a tailwind. I don't really know. But if you have a teammate If you have a strong teammate that can give you 2 minutes, 3 minutes in the wheel, and someone else is chasing not in the wheel, it can make a really, really big difference in a headwind section at 7% because these guys are going so fast. The draft is significant, and it's made more significant by that headwind. But break formation, really, this was a whirlwind. I mean, I had my trail run planned. I'm like, okay, it's going to go first 25, 30 Ks. I get out of here in half an hour because it started at 12:40.
Mate,
I thought I was
correct.
Benji. Pardon?
You were almost correct. Because
I was.
The initial breakaway action is the usual first attack from the get-go. So at kilometer 0, Wout van Aert makes a move and Jonathan Milan jumps into that move. Sometimes we'd see Mathieu van der Poel in such a move as well, but he did not start this morning with pneumonia, I think was the reason that he got out of the race. So hopefully he recovers from that fairly quickly. So he's also out of the green jersey classification. But about green, we got to talk about it because Milan is attacking once again with the first attack of the day. I'm sorry, Patrick, but if we have learned anything in the last week and a half of this Tour de France, it's that if Jonathan Milan spends too much energy in the first 10 kilometers of a breakaway formation, he gets dropped by the peloton half an hour later.
I don't know. Because, yeah, like yesterday he got drops literally on like or the other day on the flat. So Milan is a pure sprinter. He got to surf the wheels and they got to help him. I mean, who in their team's going to win this stage? Julien Bernard would have won, but they didn't bring him. So, like, Schoens ain't winning. Schelmers is out. He's not winning. No. Everything has to be about Milan Green. They need to be using Schoens and all these guys to get him into breaks. Or if a break goes, you want a big break going. You want a big break going with a big time gap so Pogacar doesn't get any green jersey points because there's 30 on top of Ventoux because it's Uni Puerto. We should say, Benji. God, we buried the lead here. Mathieu van der Poel's out. Or did you say that?
Yeah, I said it. Pneumonia. Oh. So he's out of the race, so completely out of green. So it's Jonathan Milan versus Pogacar, who's not really trying for green. Because
Van der Poel, I think he is really sick. Because his level on stage 15 was not normal. He got dropped on a 6K 6% climb and got caught by the peloton. I'm sorry. That's not his level that he showed in week 1. And because when he got in that break, I was like, green, done and dusted. He's going to come third or something, and he's going to kill Milan. So, yeah, that makes a big difference. But yeah, a break goes. A lot of this break formation is like the smaller teams or less threatening teams. So if you see Van Aert jump and you're Valentin Paris-Prancha, to me, that's a meal ticket. I'm just thinking meal ticket.
Wait.
Hop on his wheel.
What do you call a tug buddy that comes from a different team?
Tug buddy that comes from a different team.
It's not a satellite tug buddy. I'm trying to figure a name for that.
A good Samaritan. And indeed. But then there's like, so Two to go with Hirschi, the ghost of Mark Hirschi, and Marco Haller. And I keep saying Riesebek's in this race. He's not in this race. I've said it 20 different times. It's Zandra Mercer. They go in a group of 3. Everyone says, whatever. Get 30 seconds. We'll keep jumping. Jumping goes for 5 minutes. Then Niels Pollitt makes his way to the front of the peloton for his first act. And his first act is sprinting on every single rider that attacks. I'm talking, he's the first one to close it. Alexander, like a random Total rider, is in the attack phase. He's on the wheel. Sivakov's doing the same thing. And I was looking at like, there's 20 teams not represented up front. Everybody knows, if this goes to Peloton, 99% chance Pogacar wins, 1% chance Vingegaard wins, 0% chance for anybody else. And so they all have to be in the break. Pollitt, his idea was that a break of 3 would go, 2 teams represented, and there's no small roads to block it up. Like, you have to pick your poison, and the poison is a break of 10 or 12 guys that can be controlled, and you also don't kill your legs letting it go. You let a break go you can live with, not a break go that is uncontrollable.
And that's not what happens, because that initial breakaway of Murray, Sahara, and Hirschi, that gap grows to a minute 30-ish, while Pollitt marks the attacks behind. Eventually, break formation stalls, but that breakaway that formed with those three riders, that's not the end of the story, because then in the peloton, after let's say a good 20 kilometers of this breakaway forming, some riders going for a nature break, etc., coming back, we see a duo attack by Mauro Schmidt and Luke Plapp. And that is being closed by Marc Soler, pulling at the front of the peloton, pulling that back, and then Movistar starts rolling attack, and then we see Nils Pollitt coming to the front and literally verbally abusing those riders who are trying to attack. I'm sorry, but if there's one thing that grinds my gears, it's super teams that feel so entitled to say that the smaller teams are not allowed to attack. I absolutely hate it. I'm sorry, but it's a race. Like, even, can I also add on top of that? I sometimes feel like teams that want to control the race install a nature break during break formation on purpose to use that as an excuse to tell people not to attack. That's also stupid.
That happened. It got blocked up. Alpecin were blocking it. I was like, you know that if this break goes, you cannot win, right? Tudor were blocking it. I was like, Tudor's only way to win this stage is a break of 30, where they got two guys in, plus Storer. Only way they can win the stage. I'm like, why are you helping UAE block so that Pollitt can control three guys? The nature break happens, and we were like, really? So credits to Jaco for going again.
Yep.
I mean, Pollitt
and Movistar.
Like, I can sort of understand it because Pollitt wants to control the stage as easy as possible.
Yeah, but it's unsportsmanlike. I'm sorry, but they've been speaking about sportsmanship for the last 2 weeks. This is unsportsmanlike behavior.
Yeah, but
100%.
Look at it from Pollitt's perspective. You're getting paid a shitload of money. For some reason, you're in the hierarchy above Mikkel Bjerg. No one knows why, because maybe you got paid a lot of money. You couldn't compete in any classics final the whole year. You're scared to ride in the peloton. That's why he freaks out. So like, Campenaerts went up next to him they were riding on a descent, just normal, and he started freaking out because he's scared. And you took a paid holiday in week 1. You didn't position Poggy once. You faked a mechanical in the crosswinds. Super Bagnaia was your first stage to control. You fucked it up. And Poggy didn't win the stage. And today, second time, you fucked it up. And Poggy, you let the break out. So, yeah, if I'm Pollitt, but you gotta remember, Benji, winning creates pressure when everyone knows it's Pogačar. Like, Pogačar would be in the same position if his team was Narvaez and Wellens. That's the reality. Yep. And so if you're paying Nils Pollitt that amount of money and you're like, well, actually, Miguel Heidemann could do his job for 70 grand, that's why Pollitt's freaking out, because he's under pressure.
Yeah, it's true, but I don't care. It's unsportsmanlike, and I don't want to see it in races. I've said
and the funniest thing happens after. I think it emboldened the other teams to jump more.
It's true, because they kept on jumping left and right, especially Movistar. Pollitt was complaining against one Movistar rider on one side of the road, and the other one rolls an attack on the other side. And I was like, okay, this is the pinnacle of break formation again, and riders keep attacking left and right, and eventually we get a large breakaway up the road. I'm talking a large breakaway because I'm saying like 37, 38 riders, rough estimation, and there's good riders in there. And Movistar succeeded in getting riders up there, which, congratulations to them. Enric Mas, Mühlberger, both in the breakaway here. The one theme that I'm actually missing going through this breakaway, am I wrong in saying that Jaco didn't actually make it into the break eventually?
I think that's correct. So I feel bad for them. But yeah, they were the ones that reinitiated it. So the break goes, it eventually gets blocked up. It's a big break. And we see because UAE have 2 in, Sivakov Soler, Visma have 2 in, Campenaerts Benoit. Did you go through the whole list, Benji?
I did not go through the whole list.
So the stage hunters, we got Ben Healy, also GC threat, Valentin Paripantra, Julien Alaphilippe. He's got tug buddies in Hirschi, Trentin Haller. We've got Raul Garcia Piana, Champoussin, Michael Woods, and Santiago Buitrago, and Timon Arensman again, who won, of course, on stage 14. So it's a good break with tug buddies, with good climbers, the guys who are not just going to roll over, like Enric Mas, a serious climber. He's not going to roll over and lose 7 minutes like that. Or Ben Healy's not going to lose 6 minutes like that on Ventoux, even if there's a pace from the bottom. But before we get to maybe the control phase of the race, a word on one of our partners, Mont, who fuel the pros, many of the fastest riders in the peloton, some of which actually just buy Mont products themselves because they like them so much. And particularly in the hot stages, in the middle of July, like today, you want to make sure you're fueling with products that you can actually digest, because Mont, they're different in that they have hydrogel technology. It wraps the carbohydrates in a natural gel. It tastes, I really like the texture and the taste. It's not like sickly sweet. It's just, it tastes like a natural product. It doesn't get stuck on your lips or leave like a residue. And the carbohydrates wrapped in that hydrogel, which then passes it through to your intestine, bypassing the stomach. So you have way fewer stomach problems. That means you can take more carbohydrates without feeling sick. I know carbs per hour is all the rage now, and particularly in the heat, that can be difficult. So whether you're racing, training, or just riding long, Morton's drink mixes and gels are built for serious performance. I was thinking, Benji, like, should I, as like proof of concept, do I have all the wrappers that I keep in my pack in my back pocket and like be like, look at all my wrappers? And I decided that was like a bit gross.
Yes.
From the last 2 weeks I've been training. So, but anyway, if you want to try out Mont yourself, you can get 20% off your first order of Morton's hydrogel products with code MortonTDF at morton.com. 20% off their hydrogel product, that's drink mixes and gels, with code MortonTDF at morton.com. Okay, Benji, status quo. Gap goes out a lot, and we were just a bit, we said what we thought about Niels Pollitt, but in his defense, it's not realistic to think Niels Pollitt can control this for 80 Ks on his own against a group of 35.
Especially when there's two UAE riders in the breakaway, Soler and Sivakov, who, let's be honest about it, there's two potential purposes there. You've either got defensive or offensive satellite riders in the breakaway for when they get caught on the slopes of Mont Ventoux if Pogacar needs help. That's one thing. The other thing is they've got potential hedging their bets between the peloton winning and the breakaway winning. That's the two options of those two riders being in the breakaway. But Sivakov himself has not looked that good in the last 2 weeks, so he has no chance to win from the breakaway. So I assume that's then potential help from Mont Ventoux for Pogacar. We'd see about that later in the race. Anyway, next to that, Visma Bike also in the breakaway with Benoit and Kampenaerts. And Kampenaerts been climbing amazing in this race, but not at the point where I'm like, okay, that man's going to win on Mont Ventoux. So in those riders, I do see satellite riders for Mont Ventoux, but then I'm like, okay, where are they going to use them on the climb? We'd eventually see on the final climb if and when they would be used. But like you said, this breakaway gap grows to 6 minutes 30 by the foot of Mont Ventoux. In the breakaway, there's a sprint for the intermediate sprint. I'm pretty sure Abrahamsen got close or won that. I may or may not have been doing my personal siesta during that moment because the intermediate sprint of that breakaway...
Both of us weren't watching. Let's be honest to the viewers, Benji. I was up the middle of the mountain up there like at 1800 and you were having a nap. Like, Luke, it was Luke time. Like, we were both getting texts from Luke being like, this rider should move to... And he was correct. Luke was correct, but Luke was monitoring proceedings for us. Luke says Abrahamsen won, so thank you, Luke. Someone takes this job seriously. Certainly not me and Benji. And that's not true. We fucking grind, Benji. Tour de Wallonie next week, baby. The
Tour de France Femme next week, mate.
Tour de France Femme starts on the weekend. Let's go in north of France. We'll have the preview that coming this week. But this is all about Ventoux. And I'm thinking, Benji, I feel like UAE, it's all in their hands in that we expected Poggy to go for the stage, right? Like,
yeah,
Pogacar kind of is a cycling historian, not a historian, but he appreciates the significance of iconic climbs.
Well, Pollitt would not be trying to keep the peloton gap as close as possible to the breakaway throughout the stage if Pogacar did not desire some kind of stage win at the end of this race.
Nor policing the break formation so aggressively.
So before the stage started, UAE wanted to win the stage, but obviously the race situation has changed and they've come into a situation that is hard to control. Now, how hard to control? We said it, 6 minutes 30 at the foot of the final climb. And we got a fuga de la fuga in the breakaway. So from that initial breakaway, we had an attack and a 6-man breakaway, if I recall, gets created from that breakaway. It includes the likes of Temin Arensman, who won on Superbanière. We have Enric Mas, Jonas Abrahamsen, not exactly a candidate to win on top of Mont Ventoux, I'm afraid. Velasco for Astana, Alaphilippe, and Trentin for Tudor. So those are the riders in that front group, and Trentin obviously spends most of his energy to keep that breakaway ahead of the other breakaway, the second group, the riders that weren't in that first group. And Trentin does a fantastic job, and the others as well, rolling through on the flat before the climb, because that gap exceeds more than a minute before Mont Ventoux starts, maybe even 120, 130 at the foot of the climb. So that is there, but in the group behind, we've got the likes of Pascal and Korn, those type of riders riding for their climber, like Paris-Pantre. And that gap grows, like I said, to 1 minute 30, 1 minute 40. Anyway, we get to the foot of Mont Ventoux. On paper, 20.9 kilometers at about 7.6%. Now, officially, the climb is only 16 kilometers, but we don't use official profiles here. We use the unofficial ones because otherwise it's a fake news climb. The first few gradients are a bit more shallow, and then it gets deeper for the rest of the climb. So the first 4K of the 21 are the easiest on paper, I would say. But you described it, Patrick. The second half has headwinds, so we would potentially see that impact the breakaway and the action in the breakaway. But what happens once we get to the foot of the Mont Ventoux, winning the breakaway? Let's start off with the breakaway.
Well, it's Alaphilippe, it's panache, it's glory. Like, Thymen Arensman's like, and you know the DS, well, I hope the DS have told him, Julien, this climb's going to be an hour. And he's like, I got something better for you. How about I sprint you at the bottom? And you see, everyone's like, oh, it's Thymen Arensman dropped me. I was like, no, Thymen Arensman's just trying to do less than 500 watts because of Alaphilippe. I actually didn't see much of Group 2, Benji, because you've got cameras on Peloton, which is Visma, and cameras on that Group 1. But yeah, Enrique, I don't know if Enric might have done more watts than a lot of the guys in the Group 2 by the end. I feel like Enric being in front cost him today. I think if Enric starts in Group Healy, it might have been better for him.
Yeah, but it's still Enric Mas. I love the guy, but at the end of the day...
Respect Enrique.
If he does not get an advantage in some kind of way before that crosswind section, before the headwind section, I don't necessarily believe in Enric Mas winning the stage anyway, you know? So it would have to happen in this way for it to work for me. And he's in that front group, like you said, and he does attack that front group eventually, creates a gap on the likes of Arensman, Alaphilippe, who cannot follow the tempo of Enric Mas, but the gap at this point, we're early on the Mont Ventoux. I'm talking a minute 30 to the group behind, led by the likes of Ben Healy, who keeps attacking that second group. We don't see it entirely on TV, but Healy attacked a few times, and he drops quite a few riders from that second group to the point that it's like 4 or 5 riders left, and we see Paris-Pantre in his wheel, we see Butrago around him, etc. So that's what that second group looked like, and throughout this first half of the climb, it looked to me like, okay, Enric Mas is potentially riding off to a victory, no?
I thought so. I mean, Enric, if he's a great climber, not the best like game theory guy when he has 4 equivalent level guys on a climb, which can happen. But now he's solo. It's looking good for him. And all of a sudden, that group comes screaming back. And the best climbers in that group were Michael Wood, Santiago Buitrago, Valentin Paris-Pantre, and Healy. And then Alaphilippe and Arensman go. They're dropped. And yeah, Enrique's looking good. Back to Peloton, Benji. We see, and we see no images of satellite riders. So Benoit Campenart, Soler Sivakov, we don't know where they are on the mountain. We know they started with a big advantage. We don't really know where they are. And Peloton, there's kind of no one for UAE2 pace, or is that not true, Benji? Like, were you expecting it?
It's true.
Like, well, they got Wellens, they got Narvaez, they got Yates, and then you got Sivakov and Soler in front. You got some guys.
Like, they have some riders in the peloton, but Visma Lease Bike is the team that's at the front going into the foot of the Mont Ventoux. And we see the likes of I just called Wout van Aert Mont Ventoux. He won there, but his name hasn't changed towards it. Wout van Aert is the one pacing for Visma Lease Bike at the foot, and at that point, we don't see Narvaez and Wellens in the front 4 riders. Wellens is a bit further on the left side of the road. Narvaez, I didn't see too much at the start of the climb. Pogacar is in the wheel of Jonas Vingegaard, basically, from the foot of this climb. And We see that work from Wout van Aert while those breakaway riders are fighting up the road. And for the first 2 kilometers, it's Wout van Aert pacing. Now, I did not see Jorgensen's pacing. Did he work at any point during this climb or did I miss it?
No, he dropped.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it was Van Aert and then the Eagle of Durango, who I would say is back, like this Tour de France. He's been good. Like Koos on Salor could have dropped Narvaez. He had to slow down. So Koos has looked, back to what he normally did pre-23 Vuelta.
Yep.
There's a lot of discussion amongst Visma. A lot of discussion. Simon Yates talks to Koos. Koos speaks back to him. Vingegaard gets on the radio. Koos doesn't hear it. Simon Yates talks to Koos again. And then Simon Yates talks to Vingegaard. And the order, well, evidently the order was wrong, Benji. Although it's tough to know, but the order was wrong in that Simon Yates drops off the Koos pace.
Yep.
On the Ventoux. And Koos has started hard. It's reduced it to 12. 10. And we got, actually, Felix Gall went straight away. Yeah,
I was quite surprised by it. Felix Gall dropped really early. He was the rider that I expected maybe in week 3 to show up suddenly in the top 5 of GC because
I thought he was going to cook today.
This is his kind of terrain, but that was not the case. Literally, when Sepp Kuss was pacing, you said it, Narvaez, Wellens, Felix Gall, and Simon Yates all drop. Sivakov, who dropped back from the breakaway, drops without doing anything in this group as well. So that on top of it, so Joyce got left, so led up the road for Pogacar, Adam Yates for Pogacar, while Visma has Sepp Kuss pacing, Simon Yates dangling off the back, but looks like he's not going to do anything.
He can't play a further role.
But Benoit and Kampenaerts are still up the road, and that plays a role for the next phase of this race. And I gotta say, back to the breakaway for a second, Mas has been rolling around at the front of the race for quite a while now, but we're entering that crosswind section for the breakaway. That headwind section, I keep saying crosswind, it's the headwind section on top of the bald mountain Mont Ventoux, and Mas starts losing a bit of his feathers. He's been losing time gradually for the last 5 kilometers, and it's Healy that just keeps on pacing. I called him that dinosaur the other day, that like brute forces himself to close any gap by just simply hard pacing at the front of any group, and riders keep dropping off the wheel to the point that it's Mas up the road. Gap to Healy is down to 40 seconds with about, rough estimate, 8 kilometers to go, maybe less. And then in the wheel it's Pare Pantre, and the rest of that group is gone. Butrago, Van Wilder don't know where they are at this point in the race. So we're seeing this fight between Mas and Healy up the road, and I gotta say, this Mont Ventoux stage, really good. Both breakaway fight and GC fight.
It's one to rewatch because we missed a lot. You miss a lot because there's a GC stuff going. You're captivated by that. You're like, okay, Vingegaard obviously wants to try something. You've got breakaway stuff. It was really, really good. You've got France. Hasn't won a stage yet this tour. It's the longest time in the 21st century. They haven't won a stage, I think, in the first 2 weeks of the tour. I might have made that up. Can VPP do it on an iconic climb like the Ventoux? And we see with Koos, Benji, what's Vingegaard going to do? Because Koos's pace is not dropping anyone further. In fact, there's an attack of Carlos Rodriguez. When the pace drops, there's an attack of him. So we still got Onley. We still got Vauquelin, Searod, as I said, Roglic and Lipovitz. And so then Rodriguez attacks, and I'm like, Visma kind of done?
When I saw Carlos Rodriguez attacking, I'm like, okay, this tempo in his GC group is not good enough. Also because the gap to the front is not diminishing at this point. So we need some action here, because if Kuss continues doing this between quotes, relatively slow tempo, then Pogacar is never going to be under pressure here either. And with about 7.5 kilometers to go, we've got the attack in the GC group by Jonas Vingegaard and Pogacar straight to the wheel. Was a proper attack, to be honest. Vingegaard goes, Pogacar on the wheel, and then I saw in the distance, Patrick, Roglic closing down Jonas Vingegaard. And then we go to the breakaway. We see the breakaway for a bit. We go back to the GC group, and Roglic is gone. What happened?
This is the best Roglic has looked in since he's been at Bora almost, except for maybe Ancares. Like Ancares, very impressive performance in the Vuelta, but yeah, Rog was really good today. Really, really good today. I know it's a Unipuerto, it's a Vuelta style stage, But yeah, Roglic looked really good. He was stronger than Lipovitz. But yeah, Vingegaard's off. We see a grimace from Pogačar early in the attack, and then he settles down. And then when Vingegaard turns and looks at him, his face looks a bit more composed. I think Benoit, then Vingegaard gets across to Benoit, who waits, and actually, I don't want to, be too self-congratulatory, but the way the pacing worked with then Benoit, after Vingegaard's raised them to max heart rate, and then Benoit starts pulling, and Benoit's good at, Benoit is world-class, absolutely world-class at one thing, and that's 1 to 2 minutes. He can pull hard. 1 to 2 minutes, Canariberg, or what's the one in Kerner?
Oh, not Mont Saint Laurent, but the one before, right? Am I inventing it?
Starts with an H?
I don't remember.
Anyway.
I do not remember.
Benoit on 1-2 minutes is world class, and he can hurt anybody on that. And so he starts to do that sort of lead out on 9%. But Vingegaard's, his shot clock is running out, Benji. You cannot attack after Chalet Renard really with any effectiveness because it's 7%, 6%, 5% even in some places with a headwind. He has to go here. Benoit does the really, really hard lead out. Vingegaard goes again. Doesn't shake Pogačar. Pogačar's looking pretty solid, never gives an inch on this attack. But then Vingegaard's got the safety valve, Benji. Yeah. And that's why with Pogačar, he has to follow. Because if he counters Vingegaard here, let's say Pogačar's not like how to come level. Let's say his levels just come down a little bit, but he's still the best rider.
Let's say the sickness rumors are right and that he lost 1 to 2%, whatever. Yeah. Imaginary numbers here.
He's got no safety valve in this headwind here. And so say he gets a gap of 10 seconds on Vingegaard, well, Vingegaard's going to get to Campenaerts, and Campenaerts going to ride in a headwind at Pogačar's pace for 2 minutes.
Because Soler was passed and dropped.
Yeah,
so
same with Sivakov.
Soler's not ahead anymore. Sivakov was already dropped earlier. So we see that move, by the way. It was Hameau de Papin, is that correct?
That's the one, yeah.
There we go. That's the Kuurne climb. Anyway, back to the story at hand. We've got Benoit doing that pacing. Fully agree. Top-level rider at that length of efforts, and gotta love seeing it. I'm curious what he's going to do next year at whatever the name of that team is. Decathlon CMA CGM, whatever it's called. Anyway, that's a story for a weekly show. Nonetheless, once Benoit is done, we get that attack from Vingegaard once again. And this time, his attack comes just before he gets to Campenaerts. You spoiled it already, but that's the strategic plan of his Malise bike today. Attack, satellite rider, and then potentially attack again. And it's a really good plan, but it all depends on whether Tadej Pogačar shows any weakness. Because at the end of the day, Tadej Pogačar has been super solid in this entire race. So would we see some weakness in the attacks of Vingegaard for Pogačar? And in that attack towards Campenaerts, Pogačar was on the wheel. Never out of the saddle, stuff like that. Once he gets to Campenaerts. By the way, Campenaerts was doing some really, really slow gear. I was like, mate, my knees are hurting watching this.
Well, yeah, because Campenaerts had to actually... It's different to when he's trying to go on the break, where he's like over the woods. Like, no, you got to give a good draft to Jonas. You got to sit up a little bit more. don't flick Jonas by being like in aero position. But again, it's like for Pogačar, he has to be defensive here, unless he's a million times better, which didn't seem to be the case because he can just wait. The problem for Pogačar is, I'm sure he would like to win this stage. Superban, he could probably take it or leave it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
He could take it or leave it. He just won 2 in a row. And the Tour, he had the Tour, 4 mins, happy days. Today, I think he really wanted to win. Who wouldn't? But the breakaway didn't want to win, Benji. The breakaway up front, Healy, VPP, and Enrique is caught, and they start to suppress, and I'm like, Campenaerts is pacing full behind you.
And the gap is coming down. A minute 15, a minute 10, a minute 05. And with 3 kilometers to go, that breakaway of 3 riders, they start to attack each other after surplusing for a bit, which, good idea to start attacking because that gets the tempo in it again. And it's the likes of, let me go to my notes here. We see the first attack coming from Healy, and then Valentin Paré-Pancher closes. In doing so, Enric Mas gets gapped, but the front 2 sit up again. So Mas comes back. Then we get a counterattack, basically 500 meters later. VPP attacks. Ben Healy closes. Mas kind of gone after this one for a bit. Then eventually, Healy counters. VPP follows. A awesome battle between those two riders up the road. Good. And then suddenly, with 2 kilometers to go, that group is about 47, 50 seconds ahead of the GC riders. And we see the return at the front of Santiago Buitrago. Bro, I haven't seen you all day. And where did you come from?
Or maybe Van Wilder came back later in the last 700. Yeah. And to them, it's still okay. It was like 2 minutes, and then something bad happens for them. Because I thought Campenaerts is going to pace till the steep section, a mile to go, and then Vingegaard will go again. Vingegaard, you see him talking to Campenaerts, and you see a couple of breakaway riders who had latched onto the back of them get dropped. Campenaerts revs it again. Vingegaard goes with 4Ks to go. Oh, this is not good for the break. Because also Vingegaard's style, Benji, is to... he'll just keep pulling. Not full, so he'll hold a bit back, but Vingegaard and Pogačar pulling at 90% is going faster than the breakaway, with all due respect. Does Pogačar cost himself the stage win at this point?
Ooh, there is a moment where Jonas does flick his elbow and Pog does not take over. But I'm sorry, Jonas has also attacked Pogačar 3 times at this point. So
he shouldn't
if you're
relay.
Pogačar, I'm not necessarily too eager to relay either, because I don't know how strong Vingegaard still is after that. Pogačar's probably quite confident still at that point, and maybe he wants to put in a dig and get rid of Vingegaard in the process, because maybe that was his plan, because we see that about 1 minute later, Pogačar attacks on the right side of the road just as the camera disappears from them. Then it goes back. We see Pogačar with a gap on Jonas Vingegaard. Jonas was looking down the mountain, by the way. He was riding on this ridgeline. This looked like the ridgeline maybe where in 2021 he made a difference. I'm not 100% sure. But he's looking to the left, down the mountain. And in doing so, he is kind of surprised by the attack of Pogačar. Maybe he thought, okay, he's not going to attack me. It's all me that has to do it here. He doesn't want to take over, so he's not going to attack me. He does attack you. Pogačar does attack. And Jonas's response was delayed. In doing so, a 2 meter, 3 meter gap exists between them. And separation for Pogačar, that is the danger. Because when Pogačar has separation, he keeps that going, and then Jonas often cracks in the time that he's behind Pogačar, because he now needs to go even harder to get to the wheel of Pogačar to be even more in the wind, outside of the wind, in the draft. So that was an important moment in this climb, but slowly but surely Vingegaard gets back to the wheel of Pogačar, and just before Pogačar looks back to see whether Vingegaard is back in the wheel, he is back in the wheel. And at that moment, correct? You can say it.
Well, yeah, Vingegaard counted him, because it looked like Benji. It looked like the same old story. Vingegaard attacks a couple of times. Pogačar doesn't have to do it. He doesn't have to do anything. He's in yellow by 4.5 minutes. And then Vingegaard paces him on the headwind, and then Pogačar says, see ya, I'll go win this stage. Thanks very much for the lead out. But yeah, he comes back and counters him, which I think was good for the breakaway. Because then Pogačar's like, no, I'm not attacking again if I'm going to get countered. And so those two stop. Breakaway.
That attack by Vingegaard, I'll be honest, it didn't have much left, which is logical because he had just been put on the limit by Pogačar's attack, then counterattack over that. It's a good attempt. You never know whether Pogačar went over his limits trying to do that attack, but at the end of the day, Vingegaard's attack didn't really push anyone at that moment anymore. Nonetheless, you said it. The breakaway is now closer than ever for these riders, and you hinted at it earlier already. Suddenly, in the breakaway, we still have those 3 riders, by the way. We still have the likes of Pogačar, Healy, Buitrago, etc. Mas is also perhaps back at this point. And we see a man returning from the shadows that I also haven't seen since the start of this climb. Ilan van Wilder returns after helping launch Pogačar at the start of this climb. He comes to the front and he helps Pogačar significantly, probably, because he sets the tempo. He's like, okay, Valentin, get on my wheel. I'm setting the tempo here to the top. And do you think the breakaway makes it without Van Wilder?
Oh, the gap's still 43 seconds.
Probably.
I think eventually someone blinks and it's a Healy or Buitrago. I think they still make it. It might have been closer, but yeah, Van Wilder, because if you don't know, quick step no, Van Wilder no. Valentin Pogačar is extremely explosive.
Yep.
And I don't know his data, but I'm very sure that his like 22nd to 32nd watts per kilo is absolutely world class. You don't see it because he weighs 50 kilos probably. And so in absolute terms on the flat, he ain't doing much with it. We ain't on the flat. The last 250 meters of this climb is steep. They go right, and then it's actually really steep kicker right up to the finish line, where Uran and Carapaz caught Pog in 21, and they're confident in VPP, and they have more reason to be because Healy's the one that blinks. Healy attacks, VPP's in the wheel. They turn right. VPP starts to edge closer to the start half wheeling Healy, and he comes from just over the ridge and wins this race by a bike length. Really, really. And Santi's no slouch either. Like, Santi put Almeida and co on a gap in that Valenciana finish. He's no slouch, third in Liège. But this is the end of 1 hour of climbing. France gets his victory. Iconic one on Mont Ventoux. You know, VPP, he's worth whatever contract he's paid at Quickstep the next 2 years. He's made it back for them. Winning on Ventoux, as a French rider, huge win. It's a great way for them to fight back after Remco's disappointment on stage 14. So I'm happy for Quickstep. Quickstep have also won 4 stages in this race with 3 different riders. That's very impressive for a team. People sometimes say, what's happening to Quickstep? It's like, what's happening to Quickstep? They won 4 stages with 3 different riders at the Tour. Ben Healy second, bittersweet, but he's already won a stage, and he actually extends the GC lead, which we'll get to in a second. Santi third on 4 seconds, Van Doorle 14 seconds. Pogacar puts Jonas on a small gap in the final sprint. He finished on 43 seconds, Vingegaard 45 seconds. Alaphilippe finishes very close, I must say, for someone who sprinted at the bottom. So he only finishes on 1:17. And then the other GC riders, Roglic we see waiting for Lipovitz.
Yeah.
Like almost freewheeling the finish. I don't know if he was pacing him or not, but Lipovitz got away from Onley again, and he puts half a minute into him, maybe with the help of Roglic into the headwind. I don't know. Carlos Rodriguez on 3:02. That's actually pretty solid, I must say. Felix Gall, after dropping at the bottom, finishes ahead of Vauquelin. God, this GC field is thin, Benji. No offense to them, but...
Well, half of them are out. So it's logical that it's thin at this point, but that doesn't mean it's less impressive. Like, I am super impressed by Roglic today.
You're right.
The way
he
was actually getting closer and closer to Vingegaard. I'm telling you, if he doesn't get called back for Lipovitz after that first attack, there is a realistic chance that Roglic gets back at that point. The next couple of attacks might have actually been the nail in the coffin. I don't know that, but he could have finished a lot closer than he did today. But at the end of the day, that's the hierarchy that was set in GC for that team. And even with the situation that they set up, with Roglic waiting, etc., one of them does move up in GC. Lipovitz obviously stays in third place, but Roglic moves from 6th to 5th, past Vauquelin, the rider you just mentioned. So yes, Roglic could have perhaps passed only in GC, in my opinion. Would have gotten close.
Yeah, we don't know if he was pacing or waiting the whole time, but I mean, Broe in the end might get white jersey 3rd and 4th. After the first stage at Broe, Benji, they were getting criticized left, right, and center. Probably justifiably so.
Yeah.
You know, justifiably so. But they've turned this around. Roglic he looked bad at the start of the Tour, now looks $1 million. And yeah, they're looking really, really good. And you must say, this with zero climbing support. It's just Roglic and Lipovitz doing it themselves. The rouleurs have been pretty solid, like the Van Dijk, Pithy. They've been pretty solid last week.
Vlasov, his best stage in this entire race was the breakaway stage, where he had freedom. So I haven't been too impressed by his climbing in this race, to be honest.
Yeah. So in terms of GC, Ben Healy goes, I'm not sure if you said Benji, but Ben Healy now goes 3 minutes more or less ahead of Carlos Rodriguez. So the time Carlos took in the breakaway on stage 15 half of that gets scrubbed, and Healy goes back. And not just that, Healy was strong as hell today. So that is also important. I also think, Benji, it's correct that Ineos don't care about that, and you let Aronson play for the stage win in front.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Especially after you won on Super Banière. He's shown that he could do it.
Yeah.
We saw already on the Simon Yates victory stage that Arensman could win a stage in this race. So I think it's perfectly normal that you let Arensman go for his own stage. That being said, once he gets dropped by Enric Mas and is on a minute, stuff like that, then it changes for me. Then there's a change that needs to happen in the team car where Arensman should start waiting. And that did not happen today. So for me, I'm in both camps. You understand? Like, the initial strategy should be that Arensman goes for the stage. But if he visibly fails in doing so, which he was, with 10 kilometers to go, Arensman was never winning the stage anymore. Then I'm sorry, but then you need to make the decision to wait on Carlos Rodriguez.
Yeah. That's true. Rodriguez has already come 5th in the Tour.
Like, he's not going to come 5th, but it's just like, there's no value in Arensman getting a top 10 in a stage, in my opinion, here on Mont Ventoux. So I'd much rather see the team address those resources towards Rodriguez then after Arensman is not winning the stage. That's just my opinion. But anyway,
you're right.
It's not the biggest story of the day.
You're right.
Patrick, if you arrived in your chair watching the Tour de France today and you forgot all about what happened in the last 15 stages that came before today, complete dementia or something, you forgot everything that happened in the race so far, you watch this stage as your first stage in the race, how open is it Tour de France in that perspective? Because with the 5-minute gap, I don't see it as open. But if you forget about the 5-minute gap, it's pretty close today between Pogacar and Vingegaard. But Pogacar didn't have to attack.
But he did. And he couldn't get away after Vingegaard did more work. So,
yep.
I guess it's what does it mean? What does it mean? Maybe just stage to stage, some days one's a bit better than themselves, the other days they're a bit worse. And normally Pogacar's average level is better than Vingegaard's average level. That's been the case throughout the Tour de France.
100%.
So I think you can't ignore the context of the previous few weeks. But it does make the next couple of mountain stages more exciting because at least like Vingegaard didn't get counted and Plateau de Bay could have happened.
Yep.
If Plateau de Bay happens, part 2, I don't think we're that excited for the low stage. But
mate, if today was 2 minutes like Otakam, I'd be like, okay, well.
Yeah, whatever, yeah. But for the tension, at least that there'll be some attacks, there'll be some stuff happening on. And listen, is Vingegaard going to turn around a 4-minute deficit? Most likely not. It's a 4-minute deficit. But we know he has to try again. And after today, I think he'll be confident and should be confident because also the team outclassed UAE on the climb. That's with Jorgensen having to drop at the bottom. So, yeah, I think it does set up the low stage quite nicely. Vingegaard, a few things after the stage. Vingegaard was crashed by a photographer.
Yep.
So hopefully he's okay.
Reportedly some hurt in his shoulders. So I'm sorry, but how
you
many
should
times
be out
has
of the
this
race
now happened?
forever.
How many times has this now happened in a cycling race where there's a person behind the finish line that ends up causing a crash of a rider that finishes?
But why are they moving?
Sometimes there's a fault with the rider, but Jonas Vingegaard is riding as slow as possible at the top of Mont Ventoux here after the finish line, completely empty after attacking 4 times on the climb. How can it happen that a photographer causes Jonas Vingegaard to crash after the line? I do not understand that. That is partially responsibility of that photographer, but also the race itself. So ASO needs to figure that shit out.
I mean, that person should have their accreditation taken and be off the tour. I mean, you can't be crashing as a podium guy. Anyone, really. And why are you moving? So, whatever. More serious news was that Tobias Halland Johannesson apparently collapsed rather, at the finish line, one of the guys in top 10 in GC, and had to be given oxygen. Apparently, update according to Luke in the notes is that he wanted to say to everyone that he's feeling okay. I saw also a note from Hushod that it was maybe stomach issues, but apparently he's okay, but obviously that's very scary.
Let's hope that's the case.
We'll see. Yeah, let's hope that's the case. We'll see if that happens, if he starts tomorrow. But indeed, tomorrow's stage is a bit of a tranquilo stage. It's a very important stage for the green jersey battle. Stage 17 from Bolène to Valence, 160 Ks. We only have 2 categorized climbs. They're category 4s, the last of which is 4 Ks, 3%, 50 Ks from the finish. That's nothing for these guys. It's a little bit hilly, but this is as... I mean, no, that's not even true. It's less than 2,000 meters climbing. Like, it's 1,500, 1,600. This is a 50-pointer. We have an intermediate sprint with 50 Ks to go. If you're Little Trek, you have to execute this stage. This is your final stage, and they have to execute this stage. They need to have a break of 3 with Total and whoever. They need to make sure Milan takes 3rd or 4th or 5th, some points at the IS, and he's got to come top 3 at the finish because it's a 50-pointer stage, and preferably win, but you can't always win, but they have to execute this.
Exactly, because there's 11 points difference after the Mont Ventoux stage in the green jersey classification. That's nothing with Pogacar. So they need the advantage of this flat stage before we get to Col La Loze and La Plagne, where Pogacar can take 20 plus 20 points on both stages. So they would like to get a bit of an advantage. Of course, there's also the Champs-Élysées stage where Milan could take points if it's a rather passive race, but they need to make sure they play defensively. Because, can I be honest? Little Trek has had one of the... They've low-key been terrible at fighting for this green jersey. Genuinely.
Julian Bernard. Bernard must have been sitting at home watching this like, fuck me.
Jonathan Milan won one stage, is in the green jersey. He's been close in some intermediate sprints, sure. Philipsen crashed out. Without Philipsen crashing out, we're not talking about Milan here for the green jersey. Philipsen cleans it. That's a clarity. But in every break formation, Jonathan Milan jumping into the breakaway as one of the first riders. I'm sorry, but that is just the opposite of a good strategy for Milan to be having energy at the intermediate sprint. It has not been working for a week and a half, and they're still doing it. So they have to adapt their strategy.
He hasn't made one.
Yeah, not a single one. So I don't know, but this has been if Jonathan Milan wins this green jersey, this will probably be the lowest points green jersey winner I've seen in a while.
And it's a gift. He would have been gifted it, more or less, by Van der Poel getting sick, by Philipsen crashing out, by Van Aert not contesting sprints,
by Pogacar not actually trying,
and by Pogacar literally not trying. Now, of course, you got to be in it to win it. But yeah, anyway, that suffice to say, tomorrow, I think they're going to get a bit more help. Because if you're Jayco Benji, you got to go for Dylan Groenewegen tomorrow. You have to. This, like, Champs-Élysées might not be a sprint. These teams, if you have a sprinter, you have to go. Picnic won a sprint. Picnic won a sprint with Bittner.
But if you help Little Trek to control everything in this stage, then Milan will have the best lead out at the finish, and Milan will win.
I'm not sure that's true.
Okay.
He looks like shit.
Okay. It's possible. You're not wrong.
Like, in the Dauphiné, he seemed to get progressively more tired. And that was a harder stage where Stewart beat him, don't get me wrong, but if I'm the other teams, I'm a little bit... I agree with you, Benji. I think I would... If I'm Jayco or Israel or Binny even with Wanty, I think you help Trek make a really weak break go, but then after that, Trek, you got to control it.
I think that's fair.
If I'm Wanty, why should Wanty put Jonas Rutsch to help Trek control it all day? They shouldn't. But I think it'll be a sprint. I think Milan's a bit tired, so I think this could be a real outsider, like some sprinter who just has like the legs still under them. So...
Tim Merlier.
Oh, Tim Merlier, true. You got
a real outsider, a sprinter that has the legs still under it. Tim Merlier.
I would want to pick Stewart, but for some reason they're still making him do the lead outs. Yeah, can I pick Merlier as well?
Of course you can.
Okay, I'll go Merlier.
There we go.
I haven't seen him. And he hasn't had to do any jumping because he's not going for green. But
stage number 5 for Quickstep then. Oy.
So yeah, Pogacar's 11 points behind Milan in green. If Milan takes tomorrow, let's say he takes 15 IS points and 30 at the finish. To me, that's pretty conservative. So let's say he takes 45 tomorrow. That's 56 delta to Pog. Then let's say Pog wins 18-19. That's 40. Yeah, then with the intermediates, Milan should have this because the intermediate before La Loza is in literally the first 23 Ks, although he's got to finish the stage, of course. The intermediate he can still take is in the first 8 Ks on stage 19. He won't get the intermediate on stage 20, and the intermediate on stage 21, he can probably take maximum. So he has to get 40 points tomorrow.
Question. If Merlier wins tomorrow, and he wins on the Champs-Élysées, taking 100 points that way, he's on 250 points. Normally, you'd say Milan takes points at some point tomorrow in Champs-Élysées stage. So it's extremely unlikely, but it's not mathematically impossible for Merlier to win green. It's very unlikely, but it's not mathematically impossible. To the point that he might regret not going for it earlier in this race.
Missing the stage 1 crosswind split was huge for this competition. Yep. If Milan and Merlier make it, then, well, yeah, Pog's just out of the game, I would say. But that's something to monitor. The white jersey, Lipovic extends his lead to over 2 minutes to Oscar Onley. In KOM, Pogačar is now tied with Martinez. I think Martinez got a bit of a... He has to be happy today that Pogačar didn't win the stage, and indeed there was a few guys finishing ahead of him. Yep. On stage 18, for example, we will preview it then, but there's two HC climbs before Lalo's.
Patrick, come on. In a dream world, we see Visma Leasebike setting up an early attack by Jonas Vingegaard on the mother lane climb or something. That's what I'm dreaming of, mate. Lenny Martinez ain't going to be up there anymore then.
I dream of Lenny Martinez polka dots. I don't know what you dream about.
I dream about a fight anywhere. Not a physical fight, but a fight for the race. Right now, with 5 minutes difference, I don't see it. Pogačar didn't show... Let's be honest about it. Vingegaard and Visma Leasebike went all out today on the Mont Ventoux. But at the end of the day, it's a Unipuerto stage. So even if Pogačar, in a hypothetical world, gets dropped today, the gaps are not going to be 5 minutes. That's the reality of the situation. So to take enough time back, Vingegaard has to do what he said on the rest day. Risk second place to try to win this race, and attacking on the final climb, unless Pogačar completely capitulates, which we've seen in the past, he will have to start attacking on a second last climb somewhere.
I mean, I don't even think he has to risk second place. He's got 5 minutes on Lipovic.
Oh, in that sense. In the sense that even if he goes early, then he will still beat Lipovic in GC on paper.
Yeah, I mean, the gap is so big to Lipovic that, yeah, something very bad would have to happen to lose second.
But anyway, right now, Pogačar, no weaknesses visible so far in this race. So he's looking on the throne at the moment. Will that change? We're about to find out in not tomorrow's stage, but the 2 stages after that. And hopefully we still get some kind of action, even if it's just cope. Even if it's just cope, because I'm a fan of racing, so I want to have some kind of battle. But today was a very promising start, because today's race was actually really good.
It was very good. Anyway, thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back with the recap of the what I think should be a sprint stage tomorrow. Maybe Casper, Asger, and Moritz have other ideas. Should be entertaining at the end, and we'll see you then. Ciao, ciao.